What's up guys, Mango here, and if you've been playing competitive Overwatch for the last month, you may have noticed a certain cybernetic ninja showing up in an overwhelming number of your games. That's right, I'm talking about Genji. Our green pal received a major buff on June 16th that has shot him up the power rankings and made him an absolute pain to deal with in competitive. Today, we're going to talk about how to counter Genji from each hero position so you don't fall victim to his buffed up kit. Side note, if your favorite hero isn't as high as you'd like them, don't take it personally. This is meant as a general guide and you should play any hero you feel comfortable with. First off, I want to talk about how we got here. Genji has been a victim of power creep for a long time and often looked like a fragile and inconsistent pick when compared to other mobile damage heroes like Tracer, Doomfist, and Sombra, who could more easily get picks without fearing for their lives. That abruptly ended on June 16th when Genji got a straight up buff to his kit, increasing his damage, reducing his shuriken spread, and increasing his deflect duration while also giving him the ability to cancel it at will. Suddenly, Genji became much more formidable. The buff is twofold. Both increasing his damage and reducing his spread makes it easier for him to secure kills, but this also means he will be more likely to escape with his dash reset. The buff to deflect is just the cherry on top. Increased duration means he has that much longer to get out of a tough spot, and the ability to cancel it will allow him to bully other characters in duels. A character that was already slippery to pin down just got even harder to stop and was made more lethal to boot. Let's talk about how to shut him down. I'm going to start off with tanks. Genji's classic tank counter is Winston, since Winston's primary fire ignores deflect and fires in a wide cone, allowing him to track Genji better than any other hero. He also has the mobility to keep up with Genji as he dashes and climbs around the battlefield. While I would still put Winston as Genji's primary tank counter, you have to be more careful with how to play because Genji's increased damage and reduced spread can make mincemeat out of Winston's massive head hitbox. Normal Winston rules apply here, which means making sure to dance in and out of your shield to reduce the amount of damage you are taking. The next tier of tank counters contains Zarya and D.Va. Like Winston, Zarya's beam ignores Genji's only defensive ability, and being able to bubble whoever Genji targets can disrupt his playstyle and even get him picked if he was counting on getting a dash reset on the target that got bubbled, where Genji is targeting. She also has the mobility to chase him down if he escapes your backline with low health. I've placed Sigma and Roadhog in the following tier because they are less equipped to reliably deal with Genji, as their shutdown abilities are skill shots with long cooldowns. With Sigma, you are able to avoid feeding ult charge to Genji with his shield and kinetic grasp, but it can be hard to hit him with your primary fire. Accretion is great for stunning Genji, especially during ult, but can be hard to hit on such a nimble hero. Roadhog is more likely to feed ult charge to an enemy Genji, but can provide more consistent damage with his primary fire. Hook, like Accretion, can be good for stunning and focusing down Genji, but can be hard to hit due to Genji's small hitbox and unpredictable movement. I would only suggest playing these heroes if you can consistently hit an Accretion or Hook on an enemy Genji. Otherwise, I would recommend switching to one of the tanks I mentioned earlier. I'd say Sigma is a slightly better pick here since he is less likely to feed ult charge, as most Genjis play to farm their ult and then use Blade to win fights. Finally, we have Ball, Reinhardt, and Orisa in the bottom tier. None of these tanks is terrible against Genji, they just don't really bring much to the table when dealing with him. Ball may be slightly better equipped due to his mobility, but he's basically just a chunky Genji himself and is better off harassing the enemy team than trying to play defensively. You might as well pick D.Va at that point. Orisa Halt can be used to CC Genji, but otherwise her slow movement and large critical hitbox make her an ult battery. Likewise, Reinhardt has little in his toolbox to counter Genji, outside of a lucky pin. Once a brawl breaks out, he can start swinging his hammer and hope to hit the Genji, but if a Genji dives into your team's backline, Rein is too slow to deal with him, and dropping his shield will allow the enemy to pour damage onto your team. The fact that Genji can deflect Fire Strike makes Rein the worst tank counter, as Fire Strike is the main way Reinhardt builds his ult most of the time. Let's talk about healers. The two far and away best healers for dealing with a Genji are Moira and Brigette. While you can usually hear me crying about the DPS Moira on my team, this is one instance where I will be advocating for Moira, which makes her one of Genji's most formidable counters. She has enough range with her primary fire to keep a Genji at bay, and if he dives onto her, her Fade ability will allow her to escape his attack. Additionally, like I said earlier, Moira has a beam attack which ignores Genji's deflect, so if he tries to use that ability while at low health, she can easily finish him off. The auto lock on of the beam also allows her to keep applying consistent damage, even when he is dancing around. Brigette also works extremely well against Genji, but for different reasons than Moira. While Moira is good at keeping Genji at range, Brigette is great if he wants to get close to her team. She provides fantastic peel if Genji dives one of your other backline characters by armor packing the targeted character, while her shield bash can stop Genji in his tracks and allow your team to close in on him. Shield bash even stuns through deflect, one of the only abilities in the game that can do so. Whip shot can also keep Genji at distance and prevent him from getting within striking range. The next best healers for dealing with Genji are Lucio and Zenyatta, with Ana closing out the tier. Lucio and Zenyatta are higher than other healers on this list because their ults can cancel out Genji's blade. That's it. Zenyatta has higher damage and can discord Genji to make him more vulnerable, but Zen himself is also very vulnerable to Genji. Lucio doesn't bring as much damage to the table, but is just as slippery as Genji, which makes him a tough target for the ninja to hunt down. Ana's main counterplay to Genji is to land a sleep dart on him, which, while looking especially cool when he is trying to nano blade, is hard to pull off consistently. Otherwise, she can self-nade if she gets dove on, which can force the Genji back, and her range attack can also help delay Genji and force him to get healing before diving your team. If she gets caught without her abilities, however, advantage Genji. I'm going to put Mercy and Baptiste all the way at the bottom tier because they are extremely weak to Genji. Mercy needs her team to peel for her if dove on by a Genji, which is a laughable concept for about half the competitive player base, and her only other option is to Guardian Angel away, which isn't going to be enough against a competent Genji. Honestly, her best bet is to pull out her pistol to try and scare him off, but if you're going to do that, you might as well be playing Moira or Brig. Baptiste is also a bit of a sitting duck against Genji would other heroes, which also makes Baptiste a bad play. Finally, while rare, the opportunity to deflect anything you put through Baptiste's amp matrix back at your team just makes Bap look like a bad pick against a good Genji. Lastly, we're on to damage heroes. I have a hot take here. Damage heroes are actually the worst class for countering Genji. There, I said it. I would rather duel a Genji with Moira, Brigette, or Winston than any DPS hero. With that being said, let's try to rank the DPS heroes in order of counterability to Genji. I'm not putting any DPS hero as an S tier because I don't think there are any hard counters in this class. With the A tier, I have McCree, Mei, Sombra, Doomfist, and Ashe. All these heroes have some part of their kit which can be a direct threat to Genji, although a skilled Genji is able to win a matchup against anyone here. For McCree, his primary fire is most lethal at the range Genji likes to operate at, and a skillful flashbang can be enough to win a duel against Genji. But smart Genjis will avoid or bait out the flashbang, which makes it much more likely that McCree takes an L in that duel. Mei has always been a nuisance to Genji due to her freeze gun and ability to ice block if pressured, but recent nerfs to her freeze makes her less of a threat against Genji, as he's more likely to get away now. Smart Genjis will also typically avoid fighting near Mei. Sombra can sit back and hack Genji when he dives in, but once again, Genji can avoid going near Sombra, and she might be losing value if she plays in her own backline all game waiting for Genji. Doomfist is this high because his punching abilities don't care about Genji's deflect, and he has enough mobility to pursue a low health Genji who is trying to get away. Finally, we have Ashe, whose primary fire can put a dent in Genji's armor before he even has a chance to dive in, and can throw a dynamite around his deflect to put additional pressure on him. Ashe can be vulnerable if Genji manages to get in close quarters with her though. The next tier of heroes have a neutral advantage against Genji in the battlefield, and include Torb, Echo, Tracer, Reaper, Junkrat, Symmetra, and Genji himself. Torb's turret can be a bit of a deterrent against Genji, but with Genji's increased damage, he can dispose of the turret fairly quickly now. Torb's overload ability can get him out of trouble if pressured by Genji, but his large head hitbox and lack of mobility make him a juicy target. Echo can spam damage from afar and potentially land sticky grenades, but her biggest counter to Genji is her focusing beam, which can finish off a Genji who is trying to deflect. Tracer and Reaper have similar dual ability, with limited damage range and a get out of jail free ability. These matchups are usually circumstantial. Junkrat has the ability to land concussion mines around Genji's deflect, but with high mobility, it will be hard to hit the weeaboo with your primary fire. Having Genji hit your traps is another nice perk of choosing Junkrat here, but you can't really bank on that happening. Symmetra, with her defensive turrets and beam fire, can be problematic for Genji, but his sim pick is very situational and usually map dependent. Finally, you could run your own counter Genji and either shadow your enemy counterpart or try to kill their team faster than he can kill yours. Either way, it's going to come down to who is more skilled. The C tier contains characters with no natural advantage to Genji. Pharah's slow-moving projectiles make it hard to hit a slippery Genji, and his small hitbox and unpredictable movement make him one of the hardest characters to headshot for characters like Hanzo and Widow, who are also in severe trouble if Genji gets close to them. The soldier is just meh. He can poke from a distance, but unless you get a direct hit on a Genji with Helix Rocket, this duel doesn't look good for the legs man, who can be eliminated fairly quickly even through his biotic field. Finally, we have Bastion, makes him vulnerable to Genji, while Genji's deflect not only nullifies Bastion's high damage output to it. Well, that does it for our hero rankings for countering Genji. Tier counters on this list: Winston, Brigette, or Moira. It is important not to put too many resources into countering a Genji, as you still have 5 other enemy heroes to contend with, so it's important to know if your role is to counter the enemy Genji or play against the rest of the enemy team. For example, if you're Reinhardt, don't go chasing a low health Genji across the battlefield. That's exactly what he wants you to do. Stay in front of your team and let a more mobile character chase him down. Finally, like I said earlier, if you don't agree with my counter Genji in your own matches. With that being said, that does it for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed the content and learned something new, and if you did, you know what to do.